Welcome to the Vertical Church Podcast. Now, here's Pastor Josh Butcher with today's message.
We are heading towards Easter. I don't know if you know this, Easter's only 42 days away. I told the people here who are here early in the morning, every Sunday morning, anybody who is serving, we meet at around 9:05 for a time of prayer. And I told them, it's 42 days till Easter, and then it's Christmas time, right? Like that's when Cracker Barrel puts out Christmas stuff. It's right after Easter, so it's Christmas and Easter. It's all about that. No, we are approaching Easter, and Easter is a big day in the church world. I mean, it's the big day, right? It's like the church Super Bowl, It's the day we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. And so what we want to do this year is we want to prepare ourselves for the resurrection. And to do that, we're doing this series called Finished, and we're going to look at the last words of Jesus. One of the foundational beliefs I have in my life is I believe that men and women all over our area are hungry for an authentic, real experience of God. Like that's just foundational to me, that I believe there are vast numbers of people who they have this hunger for something more. Now, they may not have the words to put around it. Some of them may be very far from God, and they may know it. And then there are still other people, maybe they've followed Jesus for a long time, but they have this aching inside for something more. There's got to be something more than just coming to church, getting a couple goosebumps. There's got to be some kind of real transformation. There's real power, real difference. I'm convinced. I haven't done any kind of research to back that up. I have no statistical information to give you. It's just something that I feel in my soul that men and women want. It's not that our culture has rejected God or church. It's that our culture is rejecting status quo God, status quo church. It's that our culture rejects a church that proclaims to have power but actually is powerless. You know what I'm saying? So there's this. If we're going to be church, we've got to be a church who moves into that hunger, because it's a good thing. It's a good thing. That hunger is a good thing. It's the starting place for our journey in God, with God. It's what pulls us into His presence. It's what draws us to Him. It's what gets you on the path. It's what gets you on the path to Jesus. Now, just because we have this hunger doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? Like we weren't called to easy. We weren't called to easy street. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy and simple. I mean, Paul knew this. The Apostle Paul, writing in Philippians chapter 3, verses 10 and 11, he was hungry for God. He had an incredible experience with Jesus. I mean, he went from persecuting the church to he's on the way to take out some Christians, and Jesus appears to him, and he has this revelation of who Jesus is. But later on, he would still say, I'm still hungry. Look what he says in verses 10 and 11. He says, I want to know Christ. I know Him, but I want to know Him more. Like, I recognize there's a dimension to my Savior that I have not yet has not yet been revealed to me. I want to know Christ. And look what he says. Yes, to know the power of His resurrection. We like that part. But then look what he goes on. He says, and participation in His sufferings. Becoming, evidently, to know the power of His resurrection, there is an element of becoming like Him in His death. And so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. And that's what this series is all about. I want us to follow Jesus through His death, so that when we arrive on Easter Sunday in resurrection, we have journeyed and participated with Him through His sufferings, so that we can experience the joy of His resurrection. And to do that, the way we're going to do that is we're going to look at the last words of Jesus Christ. The last words anybody speaks, people always put a lot of weight into, right? Like sometimes they're really profound, sometimes they're silly. But I don't know if you know this, but if I'm not mistaken, even in a court of law, if you heard somebody's last words, even though that is hearsay, it can be used as some form of evidence. Somebody's last words can be kind of like a testimony. At least that's what I read. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but somebody will tell me if it's not afterwards. So, and so when we go to the cross, what we see is that Jesus had some last words. We see that Jesus had 7 last statements that really, in a way, they encapsulate everything that the gospel is about. The last 7 things Jesus would say. It's poetry, really. It's poetic that there's 7, because in Bible terms, 7 is a number that represents completion, totality. So these last 7 statements, it not only reveals what Jesus was thinking while he's hanging on the cross, but it also gives us a picture of let's call it this way. If we're talking about a journey, let's think of these seven statements as mile markers on the journey with Jesus. If we can do that, think of them like guideposts. As we're walking with Jesus into the presence of God, here are 7 markers that let us know we're on the right path. Now, when we think about the last words of Jesus, we have to, it would help us to consider the effort that it required for him to speak. I don't want to be too graphic. I don't want to, turn your stomach or anything, but I do want to paint a picture for you of the tremendous difficulty that it would have been for him to say anything. On Thursday night, Jesus is with his disciples. He calls them, they have dinner. They call it the Last Supper because it was the last supper that he had before he was crucified. He takes them to a garden and he's praying. And Luke says that he's under so much stress and anxiety that the capillaries in his body begin bursting just spontaneously, and it's like he's sweating blood. There's an actual physiological effect that anxiety and stress can do in a person that causes them to sweat blood, and Jesus is experiencing that. Then he gets arrested, and he goes through 6 different illegal trials. Illegal because they had no evidence, though they had already convicted him. They had already determined his punishment, though they had no evidence. So when they gather together, they're saying, hey, maybe we can come up with something. Like, anybody got a story? Anybody going to tell a lie? We got to find something because we've already convicted this man. And they beat him repeatedly. Jesus didn't just have 1 or 2 beatings. They beat him repeatedly. In fact, they would throw a covering over his head, and they would each take shots at him, punching, slapping, kicking, and then they would rip the cover off and say, okay, Jesus, if you're a prophet, why don't you prophesy who just beat you? They would spit in his face. They would slap him. They would take handfuls of his beard and just rip it out. Jesus, because one of the trials was before Pilate, because the Jews could not crucify somebody. The Jews could only stone somebody, and they didn't want to stone Jesus. They wanted him crucified because crucifixion wasn't about death. It was about humiliation. And so Pilate, recognizing that this man had really done nothing deserving of crucifixion, wanted to get out of it, didn't want to crucify him, so he had Jesus scourged, which is he had Jesus whipped. But it wasn't just with a whip like your belt or something. Jesus didn't get beat with a belt. No, it was a whip that each end would spring into different ends, and on the end of those ends there would be tied pieces of bone and lead balls, so that when it wrapped around his back, it would dig into his flesh, and when they whipped it backwards, it would rip just shreds of skin and flesh off of it. In fact, historians say that scourging, though not intended to kill somebody, could kill them, but often men's internal organs would be visible because of the scourging. So Jesus has been scourged, he's been beaten, he's at the very edge of life, and they force him to carry his crossbeam, which is about 75 to 100 pounds. He can't, so they have to get another guy, a guy from Africa named Simon, to carry it. He's been completely abandoned by all of his supporters and friends. They're nowhere to be found. Only his mother and 1 disciple are close by. He goes to be crucified, and again, crucifixion wasn't so much like the nails, whether they're, if you're a palm person or a wrist person, whatever, the fact is he's just nailed up there. The nails didn't kill you, okay? It wasn't like it wasn't the bleeding from your wrists or hands that killed you. What killed you is when you're hanging. I gotta be careful because I don't want to show everybody my midriff. As you're hanging there, you're slumped down, and so the weight of your body is in your hands. Okay, you've got it nailed through your feet, but your weight is hanging this way, and so the force of that begins to paralyze all of these muscles, the intercostals and the abdominals and the pectoral. All of this begins to get paralyzed. And I don't know if you know this, but the way we breathe is that our diaphragm, the muscles, breathe air in, and then we breathe air in, we're able to speak. So think of all of this being paralyzed because you're hanging by your weight. And then if you want to say something, here's what you got to do. You got to shift your weight in your body to your feet. You've got one big giant spike through both feet, and you've got to shift your weight onto your feet and press off of that one spike so all your weight goes on that one hole, and you got to push yourself up. And Jesus has been beaten to an inch of his life, so his back is shattered, but he's got to wiggle his way up the wooden cross in order to breathe in and then speak. I think the last words of Jesus have a little bit of significance. If he's going to endure the agony that it's going to require in order to say anything, I think those words are precious. Amen. And it would behoove us to listen to what Jesus says from the cross. And so with that, let's look at the first word. Luke chapter 23, verses 33 and 34. This is the first thing Jesus says. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. And Jesus said, here are his first words from the cross. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. Now here's the reality. Nobody was expecting those words. Nobody. Typically, if someone went through that agony from the cross to say anything, they were going to be cursing everybody in front of them. They were going to be spitting on them or letting out shrieks of pain and agony. No one offered forgiveness from the cross. Nobody. And honestly, I'll be real with you, I could not. I don't know if you could, I could not. That would not be the first thing on my mind. It blows my mind to think that Jesus said, the very first thing he said was a word of forgiveness. And in fact, he says, Father, forgive them because why? Because they don't know what they're doing. And I look at the story and I'm like, Jesus, I think they got a pretty good idea what they're doing. I think they know exactly what they're doing, Jesus. In fact, when Pilate was trying Jesus and he's before all of the Jewish people, he says, why does this man deserve to die? And here's what they said. They said, let his blood be on us and our children. In other words, they say, Pilate, we want to go down in history as the generation that took out this blasphemer. He claimed to be God. We want to be known as the ones who killed him. We want our legacy to be, we crucified that man. I think they got a pretty good idea that they know what they're doing. But Jesus is like, no. They don't understand the full implications of what they're doing. Paul picked up on this in 1 Corinthians 2:8. He says this. He says, none of the rulers of this age understood it being the wisdom of God. For if they had, look, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. In other words, even Jesus is saying, look, they know I claim to be God. They don't know I actually am. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know that they're killing the only cure to the SIN virus known to humanity. They don't know. They don't understand. They're trying to get to heaven by being really good and all of their good works and obeying the law, but they don't understand they're dismantling the very bridge to heaven where they want to go. They don't know what they're doing. They're spitting in the only face of the one who's trying to save them. And Jesus cries out, he says, Father, give them a shot. Don't judge them yet, God. God, you sent me to save them. I can still save them. Don't judge them yet, Father. Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. You see, Jesus teaches us something from the cross that's really important for us all to understand. When we embrace sin, we embrace self-hurt. When we embrace sin, we embrace self-hurt, self-harm. See, we think, no, you know what? This isn't a big deal. This isn't a big deal. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do what I want to do. This is freedom, right? And Jesus says, no, it's bondage. You don't even know what you're doing. When we embrace sin, we don't even know what we're embracing, because Jesus is saying, look, this thing that you're embracing is actually killing you, and you don't realize it. You don't even know. You think your actions have no consequences because you don't experience the consequence immediately, but you don't even know. You don't even know what that decision did. You don't even know what that lifestyle ends in. You don't even know where that path goes. You don't know, Jesus says. So he says, Father, forgive them because they don't know. So I want to share with you this morning 3 things about forgiveness. 3 things about forgiveness that we need to understand. If those are going to be Jesus' first words, then I think we should really dig into them and see what he says. The number 1 is this: forgiveness is our greatest need. That's what we see, because this is the first thing Jesus says. The first thing he's going to address is our forgiveness, so it must be our greatest need. See, we have a lot of needs. Our world, right? Like, our world it feels like society itself is crumbling beneath our feet, that humanity is falling apart. And the first thing Jesus does is he offers us forgiveness. Jesus does not pray, Lord, there's a lot of poor people in the world. They need prosperity. No. That wasn't our greatest need. Lord, there's a lot of marriages, really going to struggle in like 2,000 years, God. They need a lot more counselors. Lord, could you just send a lot more? No. That wasn't the first thing he said. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, because he understood that in spite of everything we can accomplish, if we die unforgiven, all is lost. So forgiveness is our greatest need. Forgiveness is our greatest need because sin is our greatest problem. Sin is our greatest problem. Keep in mind, this journey that we're on is taking us into the presence of God, where all is holy and pure and light, and nothing and no one can enter into that marvelous light unless it's been cleansed of its sin-stained soul. Forgiveness is our greatest need because sin is our greatest problem. And don't even think about trying to make yourself clean. Like, that's futile. You can't do that. I can't do that. None of us. It's nonsense. But yet people ascribe or prescribe, whatever it is, to that theology all the time. I call it good person theology. It's well, if I go to church and I read my Bible and, I stop, yelling at my kids, and I have more patience with my wife, and I avoid gluten for the rest of my life, I'll get to go to heaven. Like, if I'm a good person. But here's the fact, y'all, we can't clean this. We made a mess that we cannot clean. We cannot fix this. Our only option is to rely 100% on Jesus Christ. The only one who could do it. And so when we look at Jesus on the cross, we have to ask ourselves, well, who was he praying for? Like, if he says, Father, forgive them, well, who is them? Well, obviously them would include the Jewish leaders, right? Obviously, them would probably include Pilate too. Like, Pilate doesn't really know what he's doing. Judas. Judas betrayed Jesus, so he probably is praying for his forgiveness. Peter, of course, Peter denied him, so probably Jesus is thinking, Peter doesn't really understand what he's doing. God, forgive him. The soldiers who actually nailed him to the cross, forgive them, God. My disciples for abandoning me, forgive them. But it goes on. I think that when he's on the cross, our name is on his lips. Your name and my name and your name. Because it says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Isaiah says all like sheep have gone astray, and he has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Jesus prayed for forgiveness because we all need forgiveness. None of us needs not repent. Everyone needs to repent. Everyone is required to repent. Every knee shall bow and tongue shall confess that Jesus is Lord. Everyone. And so when Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing, his blood is already dripping down the cross. Which is, the reality is, Jesus refuses to pray for what he won't bleed for. That'd make a pretty good sermon, wouldn't it? That'd be pretty good. Don't pray for what you're not willing to bleed for. Jesus shows us that right here. It was last series, if you weren't here, we preached a sermon. Exactly that. So here on the cross, Jesus is showing us exactly that. I'm going to pray for your forgiveness while I'm bleeding for it right now. And the good news is forgiveness doesn't come with an expiration date. It's not like, well, I've used up all the forgiveness. No. It doesn't matter whether it's your first time asking for forgiveness or your 1300th time asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness gets you on the road and forgiveness keeps you on the road. It's grace that saves you and it's grace that keeps you saved. Number 2, forgiveness is our greatest need. Forgiveness is also our greatest power. Now that sounds a little odd, but just hear me out. Think about this. While they're driving the nails into his hands and feet, he's thinking about forgiveness. Why? Because look at what he said. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Not what they did. So what they do, they're doing right now. And Jesus has the wherewithal to say, God, they're hurting me right now. You see, forgiveness isn't just a response to our need, though it is a response to our need. It's also because here's the deal. When I get wronged, I don't want to pray for your forgiveness. I want retribution on your hind end. I want justice, right? But Jesus doesn't do that. Because Jesus understands not only is forgiveness our greatest need, but it's also our greatest power. Because other places, Jesus will say, you know what, you need to forgive just as the Lord forgave you. That's what Paul says in Colossians 3:13, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Because forgiveness isn't just a reactive strategy to the problem of sin, it's also a proactive strategy to show the world what God looks like. I want you to see that because that's so important. Because in forgiveness, do you remember the story, real quick, the story where the man who is lame and his friends come by and they put him on the mat and they take him and they dig the hole in the roof? If you remember that story, here's what happens. They dig the hole in the roof, they lay him down, Jesus sees him and Jesus forgives his sin. And the leaders in the room, they say, wait, who can forgive sin but God? Now, after Jesus has died, we get words like forgive each other. Who can forgive sin but God? Well, when you have received the forgiveness from the Lord, now you are invited by God to do that which only God can do. Because you have received forgiveness, now you can give forgiveness, and only God can forgive. And now that extends to you and I. God shares with us his desire to bring healing to the world through acts of forgiveness. And we get a partner with him. You and I. Because because forgiveness isn't just our greatest need, it's also our greatest power. Because forgiveness isn't a feeling, it takes faith. Listen, it takes faith to believe that the same place where the wound was inflicted is the same place where the healing will flow. It takes faith to believe that if they hadn't nailed him to the cross, the blood would not have flowed. If the blood didn't flow, the power of healing wouldn't have been released. And God's greatest power can flow from your greatest pain. When we release the forgiveness that we've received, we released power. We release healing in the earth. We release grace. God can release the greatest power in your life from the place of your greatest pain if you receive the forgiveness from God. So where have you been wounded? Where have you been wounded? Now, you might come in here and you're like, I don't have any wounds, and here's what we got to do. We got to roll your sleeves up so we can see. Unforgiveness will only hide your wounds. It will not heal them. Do you see that? Unforgiveness, holding on to unforgiveness in your heart, it will not heal your wounds. It will only hide them. Time does not heal all wounds. Jesus heals all wounds. Time apart from Jesus' forgiveness only makes the wounds infected. Because here's the deal. Some of you think, well, I've gotten over that. And God would say, if you've gotten over that, why are you so touchy? Why is it that anytime somebody bumps up against that sore you got, you react and unleash on them? Because you're touchy, because it's infected, because you haven't let the healing process begin, because you refuse to let go of the forgiveness in your own life. See, forgiveness is not just our greatest need, it's also our greatest power. And I don't want to live wounded. I don't want to preach wounded. I don't want to parent wounded. I don't want to love wounded. I don't want to be a wounded spouse. I don't want to be a wounded friend. Because if I'm wounded, all I'm doing in life is inflicting my pain on you. So in order for me to experience the healing, I've got to release the forgiveness. Why would I stay wounded when Jesus has already died for my healing? When healing is provided, Isaiah says that by his stripes we are healed. So Jesus has already procured our healing, and so why would I stay wounded when he's already won my healing? So I release forgiveness so that healing can flow out of my life. Number 3, the last thing I'm going to say, and then we'll wrap up. And this one's a bit more wordy. If you don't give it, you don't got it. Because if you got it, you'll give it. How should we live? If we've received forgiveness from God, how should we live? Well, here's the thing. Forgiveness comes in on the same road that it leaves. You can't block one way without blocking the other. That's the truth. Forgiveness comes into your life on the same path that it leaves your life. And if you block it leaving, you block it coming. If you don't give it, you don't got it. Because if you got it, you'll give it. And Jesus is both rescuer, but he's also our role model in this. Check this out. Jesus is preaching in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, and he says this in verse 44 of chapter 5. He says, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Well, here's the deal, Jesus. Right now, the crowds love you. Right now, they're all around you. Talk is cheap, Jesus. Right now, you don't have any enemies. Right now, nobody's persecuting you, but let's fast forward to the cross. Now Jesus is hanging there. He's done nothing wrong, and they're not just content on killing him. They want to mock him and humiliate him. And what's the first thing that he says? "Father, forgive them." What's he doing? He's loving his enemies. What's he doing? He's praying for his persecutors. And in so doing, he seals with his blood what he preached with his lips. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. And then he looks at us and he says, "Follow me." He teaches us in the Sermon on the Mount, the Lord's Prayer. Verse 12 of chapter 6, he says, "And forgive us our debts, God, as we also have forgiven our debtors." Forgiveness comes in on the same road that it leaves. If you don't give it, you don't got it. Because if you got it, you'll give it. So are you giving forgiveness the same way that you've received it? Are you giving it freely and generously and undeserved? And when you're wrong, you're not like me. I want justice first. Here's the deal. When I get cut off in traffic, I don't want that person to break their legs in a car crash, but I would like to see some blue lights pop up. Just gonna be honest, right? You know what I'm saying? But when I cut somebody off, I want grace. I don't want any blue lights. I want you to get a ticket, but not me. That's not how forgiveness works. Forgiveness doesn't do that. Forgiveness doesn't cut it off so that other people don't receive the same forgiveness that I have. Because if I don't give it, I may not fully understand it. I may not fully have received it. So I just want to ask you this morning, is there something that you've been holding on to? During this message this morning, is there some bitterness that you've been holding on to? Is there some hurt and pain that you've been allowing to fester because you refuse to give forgiveness? Forgiveness doesn't mean it's all okay. Forgiveness doesn't mean it didn't happen. Forgiveness doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Forgiveness is not denial. Forgiveness is the decision that I'm not going to live another day and nailed to the cross. Jesus was nailed up there for me. I'm not going to let your nails keep me up there anymore. I'm going to release forgiveness right here at the beginning of the journey. Don't wait until Easter to receive and give forgiveness. Do it today. Entering into the presence of God requires that we receive the forgiveness of God and that we release the forgiveness to others. And I think, man, today God wants to break some things in your life that have kept you stuck from moving forward in life. Maybe it's abuse, maybe it's hurt, maybe it's pain in your past, maybe it's somebody that's doing something to you right now. Listen, if you're in trouble right now, forgiveness do not throw a blanket over it like it doesn't happen. Maybe you need to report something, okay? I'm just saying, it doesn't say it's all okay. It just says, I refuse to let your nails stay in my hand and keep me wounded. All right? Let me pray for you this morning. Lord, I thank you, God, today that the first thing you said from the cross was a word of forgiveness, God, because that's what we need. every one of us in this room, whether we've been walking with you the last 3 decades, God, or whether we've been with you for 3 weeks, or whether we haven't even surrendered to you at all of us in this room, we need forgiveness. We need that continual supply of forgiveness just pouring into our lives. God, I pray that today that you would do a thing, just a fresh moving of your Spirit to blow freedom into our lives like we've never expected and experienced before. And let it come on the winds of forgiveness, God, as we give what we have freely received, as we share with others the grace that you have so generously shared with us. Right now, today, just in this prayer moment, if there's somebody that God is just drilling you with right now, it's on your mind. If you really closed your eyes tight, you would see like an HD picture of that person just right there, because God is showing you right now. Listen, you might have to forgive them every day for the next 17 years, but it can begin today. The process of healing in your life can begin today. If God is showing you, just say right now, I forgive them. You may want to go home today. You may want to write a letter. You may need to send a text. You may need to make a phone call. You may need to do something like that, okay, to express that forgiveness. Okay, if you're married, you may want to check with your spouse if it's appropriate for you to contact that person. I'm just being real. I don't want an act of goodness to be twisted into an opportunity for temptation. Just want to give you some advice. If you're married, check with your spouse. It's like, don't be Facebooking some old girlfriend or boyfriend. I need to forgive you. Don't do that. Check with them first. Share this with them. Let them let them see what you're doing. Keep it in the clear. Keep it in the open. But there might be somebody you need to release forgiveness to. And as soon as you do that, God's going to move you into a greater level of experience in Him. You're going to take a step forward in your faith. Lord, give us the audacity and the courage to take that step. Lord, there might be somebody right now in this room, they need to receive forgiveness from you for the very first time, God. I pray right there where they're sitting, God, before they can even know the words to say, I pray that they would feel your Holy Spirit just washing over them. Just receive that forgiveness today, man. Just receive it. Like, don't argue with it. Don't try to earn it. Don't try to think that you're good enough for it, because you're not. Just receive it. Say, thank you, Jesus. You might need to surrender your life to Him. Lord, you might need to pray, God, forgive me for my sin. I recognize my name was on your lips, for I do not know what I have been doing. Thank you for forgiving me. I want to begin a relationship with you. I want to start today. Let this be the first day of the rest of my life. Thank you, Jesus. In your name we pray. And everybody said, amen. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We always appreciate hearing how God is moving in your life. We all have a story to tell, and we'd love to hear yours. Please visit verticalchurch.tv and click on the little pencil icon called Amen Corner to tell us your story. Also, if you'd like to support the ministry of Vertical Church financially, you can do so by clicking the giving link at verticalchurch.tv. Thank you again for taking the time to join us as we point those far from God to life in Jesus.